Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1118, 1118, Thursday, April the 30th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so today I'm going to follow up. We're going to go on a little deeper dive into the issue that we were dealing with yesterday. And of course, it was a major video yesterday because we really reached sort of another plateau in this investigation into what happened with the Russiagate hoax, the Trump coup, and the whole nine yards. And of course, what we learned yesterday was something that I suspected that we would eventually find, and that is that we would find the direct connection between the rotten Reverend Clinton and the coup. And of course, yesterday we discovered that when we learned of Christopher Steele saying in his deposition that it was Michael Sussman who gave him the so-called tip, which turned out to be false, about Trump's server in Trump Tower was communicating with Alpha Russia Bank, part of some sort of a conspiracy, a corruption issue or something. So a crime. So that was a major revelation. But there has been more evidence now that's come out. We're going to get into that and dig a little deeper into that as well as into Mr. Sussman. So that's what we're going to focus on mostly today. But there are a couple news items, breaking news items, that we'll get to, and then we'll get right into that. The first one is a follow-up on the some major breaking news on the Michael Flynn situation. Now, there were more documents released yesterday, Wednesday, and there are more to come. But there was a major revelation that came out yesterday, which absolutely 100% seals the deal. Michael Flynn is going to be exonerated. The case will be dismissed, and I imagine whatever they have to do to completely clear him will be done in the not too distant future. But more importantly, we now have extremely damning evidence on the FBI that they absolutely 100% intended to set up and frame Michael Flynn, just as his attorney, Sidney Powell, has been saying for weeks and weeks, and now they have the evidence. Attorney General Barr approved the release of this stuff yesterday, and so we're going to go ahead and get into this. So yesterday, the DOJ provided the court with FBI notes, handwritten notes, proving that Michael Flynn was set up and framed. The hard evidence. Barr has seen it, and now Sidney Flynn has seen it. Sidney Powell has seen it. Michael Flynn knows about it. It's all over. It's just a matter now of who is going to be prosecuted for their crimes, the real crimes. Michael Flynn was innocent. He was framed and set up. Now we have to deal with the people who framed him and set him up. That's what's coming. And I'm sure John Durham is on it like white on rice. The notes are dated January the 24th. January the 24th of 2017. That means Michael Flynn was the sitting National Security Advisor at that time. The notes are dated January 24th, 2017, and they say the following, quote, "What is our goal? Question mark. Truth/admission or get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired." What is our goal? Truth, admission, or get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired. And who wrote that handwritten note? Who wrote that handwritten note? Bill Priestap, Peter's been stroking us's boss, the number one man in counterintelligence at the FBI, who signed off on Crossfire Hurricane, who was over in London the very week that Misfit dropped the goods on Papagalopoulos. The same guy who, while over in London, who was meeting with Steele's former employers and associates when he agreed not to put any of the damning information they gave him into Steele's file, into his Woods file. Because what they told him, mostly, is that Steele exaggerates and embellishes, and everything he says must be double-checked. He's not 100% solid, in other words. That's what Priestap agreed to leave out of the Woods file. And now we find out that he is the guy who did this handwritten note. What is our goal? Truth, admission, or get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired? Bill Priestap, lawyer up. You've got a lot of problems. Most of them legal and criminal. Now, the next big question you got to ask, did the Mueller team have these notes? Well, fortunately, the Assistant U.S. Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General under Barr, also provided to Sidney Powell, as part of this document release, shows a series of case numbers which will tell you where these documents were sent to, where either requested or were sent to. And clearly there's a designation in the code numbers on this case file where these notes are included, which shows that in fact these notes did make their way to the Mueller team. Mueller had these notes when they went after Flynn and prosecuted him and did this whole deal. In addition to everything else, we now know that they never, ever, they should have dropped it right there. They never should have proceeded forward. They received a copy of these handwritten notes. They knew from Priestap's handwritten notes that there was an attempt at that point to set up and frame Flynn, to at the very least get him fired. But Mueller's team pressed on anyway. Despite all that, they got a lot of problems. And keep in mind, that's what Durham's investigating right now. He's into the Mueller investigation. He's looking at all that, and now he's realized by now that it was all a fraud, all a setup, all part of the coup. The Mueller investigation was just an extension of the original coup. Man, oh man. Durham's head must be absolutely spinning. No wonder he's bringing in so many of these high-powered U.S. attorneys, racketeering guys specializing in racketeering and things like that. This is, in fact, will probably qualify as RICO violations. It just, in this case, it'll be unusual because instead of laundering money, this will be around laundering of intelligence or information, faulty intelligence, false intelligence, knowingly false intelligence, which is what makes it a RICO violation. It was fraud. So this changes a lot of things. And this whole thing is collapsing, and it's collapsing very, very quickly now. Just as we thought. If you remember months and months and months ago, I told you this is how these investigations always work. Things move at first very, very slowly. Very slowly. And at some point, they start moving very quickly. And that's how these things always work. It's this long, long period of time where you'll go, where things will just be trickling out. And then finally, you'll get to some sort of a breaking point. And at that point, it's just a gusher. Things just start coming out. It's unbelievable. And that's where we are now. We are now in the final phase where the entire thing is now coming completely unglued. It's all coming apart at the seams. And now it is the Niagara of damning information. Information that's going to put a lot of these people in prison for quite some time. Mr. Priestap, Mr. Mueller, Mr. Wise-Ass, and who's also caught up in these handwritten notes. Well, the notes were the discussion of these notes, which is involved in the email, which is how this was discovered. the discussion of these handwritten notes is a discussion going on between Peter's been stroking us and Andy McCabe. And then after their discussion, Peter's been stroking us emails this over to Loose Lisa Page. And then she moves into the position of then explaining to Peter's been stroking us how they should approach and handle the frame-up of Flynn. She instructed them on how to go about doing it from the lawyer's point of view. So Peter's been stroking us, Andy McCabe, Bill Priestap, and I believe it was Priestap and Strzok who did the actual questioning. And it's Priestap's notes, handwritten notes, and then Lisa Page giving them the legal advice on how to do it and make it stick legally. There you go. John Solomon reporting that another Clinton connection to the coup. In addition to what we talked about yesterday, where I said that was a game changer, that Durham now understands. He's looking for the origin. I told him 2 years ago what the origin was. It was the rotten Reverend Clinton and her little group of cronies. A home-cooked deal. She was running this thing. She was the mastermind. Planned, organized, directed, and controlled the operation. And yesterday we got the first installment of that, learning about Sussman being the direct source, because Sussman now gives you a direct source between Hillary Clinton and the coup plotters at the FBI. Direct source, a direct pipeline in. Now we learn about another direct source and another direct pipeline in someone who's absolutely 100% as close to the Clintons as you can possibly get. There is no one probably as close to the Clintons as this bastard. And now he's caught up in it. Christopher Steele said in his deposition that he believed that Hillary and Susan Rice were aware of his dossier research in the summer of 2016. Simpson told him that the rotten Reverend Clinton and the Democratic leadership were aware of his work. Steele also said that the Clinton leadership was aware of his dossier work. And that would, of course, include, if he's talking about the Clinton leadership, he's talking about a campaign leadership. In other words, Podesta and Mook. Now, that's a real problem for Podesta, because he testified under oath to Congress that he didn't know anything about the dossier until after BuzzFeed released it. We now know, and we've known for a very long time, that was a lie. He was up to his eyeballs in it, going all the way back to early summer. And we're going to find out why here in just a little while. And guess who was sitting right next to Podesta, representing him as his lawyer, when Podesta was denying knowing anything about it? Michael Sussman. And Sussman's the guy that hired Confusion GPS to put together the dossier. And you don't think that Podesta knew about it? And you know what? In that deposition with Congress, Sussman, sitting right there, says nothing to them about the fact that he's the one that hand-delivered this information to General Counsel Baker, or that he's the one that told Christopher Steele, gave him the false allegation tip that Trump was somehow colluding or coordinating with this Russian Alpha Bank. He said nothing about any of it. Him and Podesta sitting there as guilty as hell, lying their asses off. And now they're caught. Podesta, Mr. Podesta, you need a good lawyer. Maybe a couple of them. You lied to Congress. You were aware of that dossier going all the way back to early summer. And how do we know? Well, here's how we know. Steele also says it was Jonathan Weiner and Victoria F. the EU Newland who set up his meeting with Kathleen Kvalik. And this happened after a close friend and ally of the Clintons, Strobe Talbot, reached out to Steele in the summer, early summer of 2016. Steele says that Talbot reached out to him early in the summer of 2016, and that Talbot told Steele that he was aware of his dossier investigation and that he had material relevant to Steele's research. Strobe Talbot, one of the closest Clinton insiders of both Bill and Hillary Clinton, served in Bill Clinton's administration, has been a longtime friend, went to college. He was Clinton's college roommate. They've known each other for many, many years. He served in an official position inside Hillary Clinton's State Department. And he's currently head of the Brookings Institution, where he served with a lot of those NSC Trump haters. He is also Cody Shearer's brother-in-law. So now we have another completely direct player between the Right Reverend Clinton and the coup plotters. And again, now she's got another friend, not just her lawyer, Sussman, feeding Steele, not just her henchmen, Cody Shearer and Sidney Blumenthal, feeding Steele. She's also got one of her and her hubby's closest longtime friends, State Department government official heavyweight in Democratic circles, Strobe Talbot. You can't get any closer to the Clintons than Strobe Talbot. And now we know that he was also giving Steele information, likely getting it from Shearer or someone else. Steele also says that he knows Talbot is friends with Susan Rice and Victoria F. the EU Nuland, and he believes that Talbot had likely been briefed by one or both of them, meaning Rice and Nuland. Now, Rice's spokesperson has come out and denied that she ever spoke to Christopher Steele. That's a classic Susan Rice lie. Classic Susan Rice lie, who, by the way, continues to say that she knows nothing about nothing. She doesn't know shit about shit. Doesn't know about the dossier, doesn't know about the investigation into Trump, doesn't know about any of it. She's completely in the dark. That's her story. Now, what's funny about this, saying her spokesperson come out saying, Dr. Rice, adamantly denies that she ever spoke to Steele. Well, he never said that he spoke to Rice. He says that Rice or Nuland or both were likely the one or ones who gave the information to Talbot, who then contacted him. That's what he was saying. So it's just another one of those tricky little lying denials. And this idea that Susan Rice didn't know what the hell was going on, someone had to sign off on all those 702 queries and those unmaskings. And that would go all the way to the National Security Advisor level. That stuff would not have been done without her knowledge. She is lying. She was also present at that January 5th meeting where she wrote the Cover Your Ass Later 15 days later. And what were they discussing in that meeting? They were discussing how to withhold intelligence and law enforcement information from the incoming president so that he wouldn't learn about the investigation into him. That's what that meeting was about. What are we going to do? It's January 20th. Trump's being sworn in right now. We're out of here in an hour, and he's coming in. This is going to be his new office, and his people are coming in. What are we going to do? How are we going to continue to conduct this investigation into Trump and his team without telling him or letting him know? That is the predicament they were in. That's what the meeting was about. She knew everything. Susan Rice, you better get yourself a lawyer. Steele says Talbot told him he learned about the dossier project from one or more Obama administration officials. Boom. That is damning evidence. Damning evidence that Steele has just given to Mr. Durham, who's now reading every bit of this. In fact, he probably had this weeks ago, because this deposition occurred back in March. There you go. A Hillary Clinton insider, a Bill and Hillary Clinton longtime insider, a close personal friend, telling Steele that he learned about the dossier project from one or more Obama administration officials. So there you go. He's just indicted the Obama administration. Because if Rice knew, if Nuland knew, Obama knew. Talbot knew Carter Page also very well. Had known each other for many years. So here's Talbot. He knows Carter Page. Carter Page had assumed up to this time that they were friends. But here we see that Talbot was working behind Carter Page's back to stab him in the back to get at Trump, despite the fact that they'd been friends for years. Christopher Steele gave Talbot a copy of his dossier in November of 2016. He had it long before that. He had it long before that. Talbot gave Fiona Hill the dossier on January the 9th of 2017, one day before BuzzFeed released it. And where was Fiona Hill? One of the deep staters inside the NSC that was trying to take down Trump in a coup, who's now been moved out, you might say. So, those are the new revelations, more damning evidence, another even more direct connection from the Clintons directly to the coup plotters. And Steele's telling us all about it. Steele's going to throw them all under the bus. You wait and see. Ultimately, Durham is going to get a conversation with Christopher Steele. You can bet on that. He is ultimately going to be forced to talk to Durham. And when he does, Christopher Steele is going to spill the beans on everybody. He's not taking the fall for these people. I promise you that. He's a sissy. He's a coward. This guy can't do 1 day in jail. I can tell you that right now. I can look at this guy and tell you he can't do a day in jail. Now, I want to drive down in the last 10 minutes, a little deeper dive into what we were talking about yesterday, and just bring a few other facts into play and a little more focus on the Sussman angle. So, Steele and Sussman met on July the 29th of 2016. These dates are important. Here's the events that occurred just 3 days before Crossfire Hurricane started and before they went and got the warrant on Carter Page. Steele and Sussman meet on July the 29th of 2016. That's 2 days before the beginning of Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Also, it's 1 day before Steele met with Bruce and Nellie at the Mayflower Hotel in D.C. They met on July the 30th. So the 29th, you have Steele and Sussman meeting. On the 30th, you have Steele meeting with Bruce and Nellie in D.C. And, of course, we have that email that Steele sent to Bruce to set up that breakfast meeting. And let's take a look at that email now. We first saw this over 1.5 years ago. Now let's read it with all that we know now, and let's see what we think about it. Here it is. This is Christopher Steele emailing Bruce Orr on July the 29th of 2016. Quote, "Just to let you know, I shall be in D.C. at short notice on business from this p.m. till Saturday evening. If you're in town, it would be good to meet up, perhaps for breakfast tomorrow morn. Happy to see Nellie, if she's up for it. Please let me know, Chris." Now, what do we know? With all we know now, and now we look at this email, what do we see here? Well, this changes everything. Now, with this email and with everything else we know now, this now tells us what the pecking order was. What the pecking order was. It tells us Steele had been summoned to Washington by Sussman, and he got there. And when he gets there, Sussman drops this story on him about the Alpha Bank server. The next morning, Steele's having breakfast with Nellie and Bruce. And the following day, we get Operation Crossfire Hurricane. And 3 weeks later, we get a warrant on Carter Page. What does this tell us? It tells us that Steele was not driving the train. He wasn't the guy out there digging up all the dirt and running the show. Steele was an employee. He was a patsy. He was the guy they were using just to sell the shit. When they snapped their fingers, Steele came running. They used their people to pump the information into him, and his job was to go out and sell it to the media, to the FBI, to the State Department, to anybody he could. Steele was dancing to their tune, not the other way around. That's what this tells us. That's a game changer. That's a big game changer. When the DNC was allegedly hacked in 2016, who was the lawyer that brought in CrowdStrike? When the DNC was allegedly hacked, this is the question, when the DNC was allegedly hacked in 2016, who was the lawyer that brought in CrowdStrike? Correct answer, Michael Sussman. Whatever Sussman knows, the rotten Reverend Clinton knows. He was her lawyer. And guess what? He was dancing to a tune as well. The Rotten Reverends. She's the maestro behind the curtain, playing the tune. Everyone is dancing to it. Now, yesterday I was talking about all the different ways that the Rotten Reverend Clinton pipelined her people and information into the State Department, the FBI, the intelligence community, in order to get this whole thing going. And I forgot, and I even left out one of those. And the one I forgot to mention yesterday that I'll remind you of today is Manafort. Manafort was framed up by the Black Ledger scam, which turned out to be phony as well. And who brought that into play? Alexandra Chalupa. And who is she working for? The DNC. And who did she say she was personally reporting to? The Clinton campaign. So it wasn't just Flynn. It wasn't just Carter Page. It wasn't just Papadopoulos. It was Manafort as well. That also was a Hillary Clinton inside job. As I just mentioned, Steele was not the guy giving the goods. Steele was the guy getting the goods and then going out to sell them. He was the middleman. He was an employee selling the dossier. As I just mentioned, it was Steele who was summoned to D.C. by Sussman. And then once he got that information, it was Simpson, Glenn Simpson, who directed him to put that in Memo 112 and give it to the FBI. Essentially, they brought in Steele to go out and sell the old proto-dossier that wasn't good enough. So they brought in Steele for the new and improved version of the proto-dossier, with Steele being the salesman. And then, of course, what do we get? What do we get? Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. July 22nd of 2016. Which we are told, and we are led to believe, was the beginning of Crossfire Hurricane 9 days later. So in addition to the Sussman-Steele meeting, the Steele-Orr meeting, we also had the Downer meeting with Papadopoulos. This all occurred within 9 days of the opening up Crossfire Hurricane. It was the triple play.
It's a hard ground ball, and it's hit over to third base, up with the ball, and it's over to second, and he cuts down Sussman at second base, and he's got Steele wrapped up at first base. Double play. No, wait, it's not a double play. There's Downer breaking for home. Here comes the throw. It's on the plate. It's on the money. Got him. He's out of there. Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. He's out at home. A triple play.
Let's get a round of applause. Excellent. Come on, everybody. Round of applause. Triple play for the coup plotters. We have Alexander Down the Hatch Downer dropping the dope, getting the dope from Papadopoulos that was planted on him by Misfid. Several days later, we get Steele and Sussman, where Sussman drops the dirt on Steele. The following day, we get the breakfast meeting with Steele and Bruce and Nellie. And then we get Operation Crossfire Hurricane. The triple play. Well done. But they're caught. Sussman was the senior counsel to the United States Department of Justice Computer, Crime, and Intellectual Property Section in the District of Criminals from 1997 to 2005. He has provided counsel to the FBI, the Secret Service, and various other government agencies on wiretap statutes. Sussman is an electronic communications expert, particularly in the area of electronic surveillance. He also knows John Brennan very well and is a longtime friend and associate with James Baker, General Counsel James Baker, the FBI lawyer for Comey. So what do we have here? We have the Rotten Reverend Clinton. She's got her direct link to the FBI, her lawyer Sussman. She's got her direct link to the CIA through her lawyer Sussman to his good friend John Brennan. So now the Rotten Reverend Clinton has her direct link to the FBI and the CIA, from Sussman to Baker and Sussman to Brennan. That's how the Right Reverend Clinton was able to feed those two organizations so that they could coordinate with the media campaign being run by her cronies at Confusion GPS and her inside hatchet men, Shearer and Blumenthal, with a little bit of an assist from Talbot, Baumgartner, Bruce and Nellie. Home cooked, inside job. There were no fucking Russians. This shows a direct connection to the conspiracy with the rotten Reverend Clinton. Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, has connections to Hackloot. He's photographed in a picture in their New York office. He knows all these guys very well. Brennan is connected to Hackloot. And in Hackloot, all these following individuals are a part or connected to Hackloot. Joseph Mifsud, Robert Hannigan, Chrissy Steele, and Alexander Down the Hatch Downer, all connected to Hackloot. And what do we learn about CIA, former director of CIA, Brennan, over the years? He has subcontracted a lot of work to Hackloot. Over the years, Brennan has subcontracted a lot of work out to Hackloot. The rotten Reverend Clinton to her boy Sussman, to Brennan, who then subcontracts the work out to Hackloot. And then it all fits together with the media strategy she's running with Fusion GPS. They got Christopher Steele the spy, who they're feeding. They're pipelining shit into the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, foreign governments. The rotten Reverend Clinton has got one hell of a show going, don't you think? And right now, John Durham, his bells are ringing in his head right now. The same bells are going off in his head right now that went off in mine about 2 years ago, when I first realized this was a rotten Reverend Clinton operation. And now an update on who might have been that leaker who leaked the Flynn Kislyak phone call. Now, it's been speculated now for months, I guess, we've been talking about this, that it was this guy, James Baker. Not the same General Counsel James Baker in the FBI, not the old Bush State Department guy, James Baker. No, this is a different James Baker. This is a James Baker who was Stefan Halper's boss and who authorized all the money to Stefan Halper and the shit that he was doing. We now know that this guy, Halper's boss, this James Baker, Halper's boss, had 37 email exchanges with David Ignatius, who broke the Flynn Kislyak phone call story. 37 email exchanges between 2015 and 2018. So it's looking more and more like, in fact, it was this character, this James Baker, at the Pentagon, Office of Net Assessment, Halper's boss, who is likely the person who leaked the information about the Flynn Kislyak phone call. The whole house of cards is collapsing. The smoke and mirrors are going away. It's all becoming clearer now exactly what happened here. And as I said 2 years ago, this was a Clinton-run operation. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. Stay well.